welcome to Alabama. I'm Dr. Leanne Dillard, the State Forage Extension Specialist for Auburn University. While we weren't able to get everyone on a bus and take you around our state, we're hoping this virtual tour will give you an idea of some of the amazing things our producers and research team are doing across the state. We're going to start our tour at the Wiregrass Research and Extension Center, which is in the southeastern corner of the state, otherwise known as the Wiregrass.
Greetings. I'm Rickey Hudson. I'm a regional extension agent in southeast Alabama, which we call the Wiregrass region. This is actually also a tri-state region, as we border with Alabama borders with Florida and Georgia. And so we do a lot of work with extension across state lines, and our research reaches to all three states. The Wiregrass Research and Extension Center here is very vital. It's located in Henry County in Headland, Alabama. And of course, our physical address is 167 State Road or State Highway 134 East. This station was established in 1929, so we're about 90 some odd years into it. And this station primarily focuses, as you can imagine, on peanuts, then cotton, and cattle. And so that's the three main emphases that's looked at on this station. Primarily peanuts, as peanuts is the, I guess a large percentage of all the peanuts grown in the world is actually grown within a 50-mile radius of Dothan, Alabama. And so we're about 10 miles up from Dothan in this location here. We're on coastal soils here, so it's very sandy. It is a sand to a loam soil type soils that we have here. And so the research work is very specific for this particular geographical area.
I'm Chris Parker. I'm the Associate Director at the Wiregrass Research and Extension Center. And I was just going to take a few minutes to just let you know what we do here. We're in the Wiregrass region of Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, and we're in the southeast corner of Alabama. And in this region called the Wiregrass, we mostly, our research center reflects what area farmers do on their farm. We're mainly row crop producers that all have a herd of cattle on their place. Our job here at this center is to utilize our land and resources to help these row crop farmers not only help their row crop side of their operation, but we also focus during the winter time and the spring on grazing cattle here. I would say a main emphasis we have here is the grazing programs that we conduct through Auburn University, helping the researchers and investigators with that. Another thing that I'd like to mention that kind of sets our area apart, we take advantage of fairly mild winters, and this allows us to grow grass year-round here. We do a great job in the summer with the climate. We're offered to grow Bahia and Bermuda, both for hay and grazing, but it also offers us the opportunity to grow cool season annuals here, and we grow a lot of different mixtures. We conduct several forage variety tests. We also conduct a small grain variety trial as well as a ryegrass variety trial. So we're what I would consider a forage center in terms of testing. It takes up a lot of our time during the less than peak time that we can conduct row crop research. We have here on the place we have about 200 head of cattle. We usually just have try to in the summer have 40 to 50 head of brood cows, and the balance of that is in stockers that we use with our grazing studies to handle those.
Today to talk about our alfalfa and Bermuda grass study here in Headland at the Wiregrass Research Station. So we established this study last year, and this is our first year of data collection. Here we have 6 paddocks. Each one of them is 1.8 acres, and this is only rain-fed. We don't irrigate this area. So the preparation of this area started last September when the existing Bermuda grass field was cut for hay. Here we have a mix of Chieftain 85 and Russell Bermuda. And after it was cut for hay, we turned animals in to clean up, and to get to a 2 to 3 inch stubble high before we plant alfalfa. So in late October, we planted alfalfa using a no-till drill and a seeding rate of 15 pounds per acre with a row spacing of 14 inches. Here we are using Bulldog 805 variety, and there are a lot of other varieties that people could choose from to use in South US, but and including varieties that have Roundup Ready genes, which facilitates the weed control weed management of broadleaf weeds. But so on this case, Bulldog is not one of those, and we are more limited on the options that we have to control broadleaf weeds here. At planting, a light rate of Roundup was used as recommended to suppress the grass and control emergent weeds. Initial soil testing was done before we planted alfalfa, just to make sure we applied the lime needed, and also to get the recommendations for potassium and phosphorus for the area. So when you are planting alfalfa, soil sampling needs to be conducted for the surface, which is 0 to 6 inches depth, and for the subsurface, which is around 6 to 12 inches depth. And this extra sampling is crucial when you are planting alfalfa because its roots go deep on the soil profile, and it requires pH to be at least 5.5 on that depth to be able to use the nutrients that are there and to establish well your stand. So for alfalfa, it's also important to apply boron and molybdenum at planting, because those guarantee proper conditions for nitrogen fixation. The paddocks have been scouted weekly for insects, and when necessary, we applied Mustang Max to control insects. For the fertilization management here, we are applying 200 pounds of potassium per acre per year, split in 3 applications. And so all the nitrogen that the Bermuda grass is getting is from alfalfa fixing nitrogen on this system. In this area, we have 3 different managements being used. One is cutting for hay or baleage, another is grazing, and a third one is a dual purpose management, which means that we cut or graze those paddocks depending on the time of the year. For paddocks that we cut for hay, we follow the recommendations of cutting every 28 to 35 days to 4 inches stubble high, and we have been baling that material for baleage. So the way that we do, we cut the material, the paddocks in the afternoon, and we bale on the next morning when the material is around 40 to 60% moisture. Then on paddocks that we have animals grazing, we are using rotational grazing, and so we split these paddocks in 4 strips. As you can see, we are using fencing, temporary fencing here. So they were just to make sure that we had those little strips inside each paddock, and we rotate animals every 7 days for the following strip.
Hi, my name is Russell Carrell, and I'm a PhD student in the Auburn Department of Animal Science. And we're coming to you today from the Wiregrass Research and Extension Center in Headland, Alabama. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our grazed cover crop trial that we have in progress here at the station. This is a 4-year project funded by the United States Department of Agriculture. And the purpose of this project is to test the sustainability of grazing cover crops. Cover crops have become a great staple for row crop producers here in the Southeast and especially in South Alabama. But the investment of cover crops often comes with little to no return. So our goal of this project was to test different grazing lengths to see how viable this system was on a row crop setting and look at the different impacts that grazing can have on both forage production, cattle performance, as well as cash crop performance. So our experimental design for this treatment is a completely randomized design where we have one treatment being grazing length. Cattle are placed on pastures starting in January until either mid-February, mid-March, or mid-April. Along with this, we also have an ungrazed control where cattle are never allowed to graze. In terms of our forage production and forage performance, we analyze for yield as well as wet chemistry, primarily being fiber fractions of neutral detergent fiber, acid detergent fiber, acid detergent lignin, and ash, as well as crude protein. On our cattle performance side, we analyze for average daily gain as well as total gain per acre, and this gives us a way to kind of test and look at the individual animal's performance as well as the performance of the system as a whole. So we have some different ways of looking at that data and analyzing and getting a couple different angles on overall return on our investment. When we start to look at some of the things that we analyze on the row crop side, we look at yield of cotton and peanuts. These fields will, in the summer, they go on a rotation between cotton and peanuts with the same cover crop mixture year in and year out. Our cover crops, I might mention, consist of 4 different forage varieties. We have FL 401 cereal rye, we have Cossack oats, AU Sunrise Crimson Clover, and a T-Raptor Brassica. And these are mixed at recommended pounds per acre and no-tilled into this system following harvest of the cash crop in the fall. To date, we have seen some differences in terms of our yield. As you might guess, the ungrazed cover crop has the most yield, but when we start to look at our differences among our grazing treatments, we see that there's no difference in paddocks that are grazed until mid-February, mid-March, or mid-April. In terms of cattle performance on an average daily gain basis, we really don't see any differences. The cattle average between 2.5 and 3 pounds per day. And in terms of our total gain per acre, though, by allowing those cattle more time on pasture through March and through April, we see differences between each of our grazing differences, with April by far having the highest total gain per acre. Again, this is a 4-year project. We're currently in year 3 of this project, and we're starting to get that wrapped up. We'll have 1 more year. This data has been presented at the Animal Science Southern Section meeting, as well as American Forage and Grasslands Council and the Crop Soil Science Association. If you have any questions, feel free to contact myself or Dr. Leanne Dillard or Dr. Kim Molnix, and we'll be happy to get you any more information. Thank you.
I'm Kelley Palmer, and I'm the Regional Extension Agent for Livestock and Forages in Southwest Alabama. We're here today with Ken Kelley, who's also Regional Extension Agent for Farm and Agribusiness Management, and Tim Tucker, who's a producer in Southwest Alabama. And he's going to tell us a little bit about the operation they have and a little bit of their farm background.
We're standing on actually my great uncle's farm, which runs continuous with our farm here. And it's been in our family since 1897, homesteaded in 1897. We're row crop, livestock producers. We have a few brood cows, we keep some stockers, and we plant cotton and peanuts. Where we're standing at right now was a field of strip till cotton planted into ryegrass winter grazing of 19, and before we harvested the cotton this year, we planted ryegrass back into it, had an aerial applicator apply the ryegrass. We picked the cotton and we nitrated it as soon as we got through picking. These cattle were turned in here, I'm going to say the 1st of December. The grass was pretty short. We were supplemental feeding them with commodity feeds. But they haven't had any feeding, or they quit eating feed about the 10th or 15th day of January. It's been about a month they hadn't eaten any feed.
And for those of us that know you, we kind of know you like to experiment with your forages. So y'all are planting stuff, summer annuals as well as winter annuals. What have you found that works best for y'all? What not so much?
Of course, ryegrass is one of our big winter programs just because of the labor we can save by getting it planted while we still have cotton in the field. When we do peanuts, we like to scatter the seed ahead of the digger. And then when we come back in nitrate, if it doesn't look like we want, we'll add some ryegrass in that mixture with my nitrogen. If we try to plant it just any way we can get it planted. That's what we shoot for. We try to spread it right ahead of defoliation. We try to get the defoliate on before it germinates. The products we use never has really hurt it burning a little bit, but I'm sure there's some products you could use if it was germinated. It may would even kill or hurt the stand, but we try to. And then the only incorporation this had was the cotton picker running over it, the bowl buggy going to the module builder, and then the spreader truck when it spread the fertilizer. Sometimes we'll have to come in on the end rows where we really go hard. We'll have to touch those up with a little grass. Sometimes they seem like they do better, sometimes they seem like they do worse. We have found if we do much bush hogging, the cows are going to use them for lanes and they'll about to trunk the grass up. So we don't bush hog much. In the summertime, we'll keep a few cattle around the real little end, and we'll buy some to go with them. Usually we have to supplement them some, especially if they're on Bahia grass, which is a primary summer pasture here. We have planted some summer annuals. We like the brown rib millet, and we usually put sun hemp in with it. And the last few times we've planted it, we've put red ripper peas or Chinese red peas in it. The fellow I get my seed from always wants me to put a little bit of buckwheat in there, and I don't really know why, but that's what I do. I put a little bit of that in there. He says it helps the soil. Your cattle are no better than your forage program. I urge people to soil test. I urge people to not overdo, but not skimp. But the main thing is, I would suggest anybody get started not to try to buy too much equipment. I tell people all the time, I'd rather invest my money in fences and water lines than I had hay balers and tractors.
Hey, you're speaking Mr. Kelley's language there. And we still put up hay, and to some people it sounds like a lot, but actually we won't have one bale of hay for every head that we have on our farm. We always laugh and say, any day without hay is a good day. But then on hay, while we're talking about it, my forage, if you're gonna make hay, I think you need to try to make it as good a quality hay as you can. And I also say if you're gonna pay for a hay barn, whether you build it or not. I feel like we should tell people we didn't pay you to say all this stuff.
Tim, what about your fencing? You do a lot of electric fence?
Yeah, a lot of electric fence. I laugh and tell the folks at the stockyard, if it's 4 strands, it's a catch pen. If it's 3 strands, it's a trap. If it's 2 strands, it's a training pen. If it's 1 strand, that's what they're supposed to stay behind. Well, I have folks all the time say, well, I got one, she won't stay behind 1 strand of wire. Of course, we try to keep them hot, but I tell folks all the time, that's a cow that wants to be relocated, because I ain't changing all my fences for 1 cow. But we do use a lots of electric fence, and we take them up, we take them down, but we've had good luck with it, but I just think fences and cross fences and water systems will help you. And then that way, if you're cross fenced and all, if you get a chance to cut a little hay on a spot, you can cut your little hay.
Prevatt Farms has owned and operated a beef cattle and forage operation located in the western central Alabama Black Belt since 2011. The farm is managed by Dr. Walt Prevatt, a retired ag economist, his wife Peggy Prevatt, a retired healthcare professional, and their son Chris Prevatt, who currently serves as a specialized extension agent with the University of Florida. My name is David Daniel with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System, and I recently had the pleasure of visiting with Walt and Peggy.
We would like to welcome you to Prevatt Farms, and we're a family farm, and when I say family farm, that includes my wife Peggy, whom we affectionately call Lady Boss, and our son Chris, and of course myself. And we have been farming together a little over 10 years, and we primarily farm stocker calves and a few brood cows. Peggy and I both grew up on mixed enterprise farms, primarily row crops and watermelons and cattle and hay. And Chris grew up playing just about any kind of ball that he could sign up for in Auburn. So his background is somewhat varied, but he probably more than 10 years ago, he developed an interest in the stocker cattle and forages, and he's really helped us make a lot of progress on this place in comparison to what we have done on our Florida farms. The farm in Florida is part of the farm I grew up on, and it's only about 125 acres, and we run stocker cattle there. This farm we bought in 2011, and it's about 360 acres, about 270 acres of grass, and we have primarily, we've done a combination of grazing kinds of enterprises here, whether it's been grazing cows or stocker cattle, predominantly in the last 6 or 7 years. And so that's kind of the background for our farm, and what we do.
Is there any one feature or a few features that make your farm here unique?
I don't know about unique, but we are a little different than your typical stocker operator. Most of the stocker operators are fall to spring or fall to summer here in the South. We run stockers primarily between February and November. We like to buy the lightweight calves in February and March, and then we'll as much grass as we can grow between then and the following November, and then sell and ship them as by late November, early December. So that is a little different about us. It doesn't fit the normal traditional seasonal price trends. The lowest price on those lightweight calves is in October and November. We're buying probably at the highest point in terms of the lightweight calves, but it kind of fits our program. We think that those calves are a little hardier. They have a little better help on them, and they probably have a little more compensatory gain in them. So that kind of works. Plus, our labor force, for some reason, doesn't like to work between Christmas and 1st February. So that also figures into the program. But it has been a decent program. Our son Chris has gotten us to start using a good many annuals in our perennial grasses, and while you can't grow as much quantity, it has spread out our level of forage production, and we like it. It allows us to be lower cost producer whenever you're spreading that forage production over different time periods and not trying to hit this window with this particular monoculture and another window with a different one. It's working for us, and we tend to like it pretty well.
That's great. That's a pretty thorough breakdown there. I wouldn't expect anything less from you there.
Well, it's you have to be careful when you ask an ag economist something. There's no telling what kind of detail he may give you.
Have there been any specific challenges you all have faced from a forage production standpoint?
Oh yes, a good bit of this farm is primarily the traditional black belt soils, but these are probably more marginal soils. So I think that's a challenge. It's these aren't highly productive soils, but they grow grass, and we by incorporating both the winter and the summer annuals into these perennials. We think it's working, and the grasses on these soils are there's a wide variety of whether it's fescue or Dallas grass, and you got Johnson grass and crabgrass, and there's a little bit of Indian grass, and might even find a blue stem or so on this place. And of course the typical Ladino clovers, and we've also included a couple more of the white clovers and a couple of the red clovers.
Yes,
and that has improved our quality of our forage and added a little bit of nitrogen to it as well. But in terms of challenges, I think getting this farm back up to speed. When we moved here, this farm was waist high to overhead high in weeds. And so we've had a challenge in terms of, getting everything mowed down and getting some better grasses in here. There was a lot of sedge grass here when we first moved to this farm, and so we, it's been a challenge, but we've made a lot of improvement, and I'm sure we're growing 2 to 3 times more grass than what we did when we first bought this place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a big
but now,
gold star for what management can do.
Yeah. We still have some challenges ahead of us. We still are, trying to get more of the clovers in our pastures, and a good many of them we're getting closer to to 15 or so percent, so 10 to 20, something like that, and that's where we'd like to be, so that we can improve the quality and utilize the nitrogen as well. So we did put electric fence all the way around this farm, and Miss Peggy didn't ever think we were going to finish, but after 4.5 miles of fencing, we finally got around it, and that has been a blessing in that we use those polywire fences to to cut the farm up into different portions and be able to rotationally graze. And that rest and rotation has been really phenomenal in terms of helping remove some of the sedge grasses, as well as allow us to drill in and utilize more of the improved varieties.
Well, no, I noticed as we were driving in, that's a lot of polywire. That didn't put itself up.
It's work, but it's work, but it's worth it.
It's work, but I've taught her how to do it. She does it well now. Another thing that has been not easy to overcome is, is trying to get water to all the different places on this farm. The lower part of this farm is kind of a remote area that there's no electrical lines running anywhere near it, and so learning how to gravity feed some ponds to keep 200 head of stockers out of one pond, was something that was an adjustment and a change. But we're learning to do that, and I've always known that good clean water will add to your average daily gains, and even though we've been here 10 years, I'm still trying to get that done in all of the pastures. We haven't quite got it done yet.
So as you've seen the increase in I guess your forage quality, and due to some of the changes that you've made, have you seen an increase in animal performance? Yes. In fact, that's we started off with grazing cows because of the quality of the forages, and the quantity wasn't as good as what it needed to be for stockers. And as we started making improvements in the forage quantity and the quality, then we were able to transition to the stockers. And we
it's every year is different, and even though we have this plan, we kind of evolve a little bit each year, and a lot of that depends on the quality of the calves that you're buying as well as the weather, and that's something that has certainly been a challenge to not an easy thing to do, is to put up high quality hay.
Right.
And the weather again is so limiting. Plus, we kind of get specialized in grazing, and there's numerous sources that'll tell you that it's a whole lot cheaper to let the cattle harvest that grass.
Do the work. The cows do the work.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
The Black Belt Research and Extension Center is located in western central Alabama in Marion Junction. It was established in 1930 when its primary research focus was restoring soil fertility to the heavily used soils in the Black Belt region of Alabama. A point of notoriety for the center is that in the 1970s, its researchers were the first to associate poor cattle performance with endophyte fungus and tall fescue. Today, the Kelley Auditorium serves as the center's headquarters for its 5-person staff. The current center director is Mr. Jamie Yeager, and the auditorium also serves as a regional meeting venue for ag production education programs that are offered throughout the year. The staff works to manage the 1,100-acre facility and assists ACES and university personnel in coordinating the center's ongoing research projects. Roughly 85% of the center's forage base is made up of endophyte-infected tall fescue. The center also has designated research areas focused around the management of native grasses such as little and big bluestem, gamma grass, and Indian grass. The center is commonly referred to as the BBREC and is also home to a commercial cow herd composed primarily of a Sem-Angus genetic base. Recent BBREC beef cattle research has focused on reproduction efficiency in beef heifers and weaning strategies for beef cattle operations. While the bulk of the research done here at the Black Belt Research and Extension Center is focused on beef cattle and forages, the center is also home to some row crop variety trials for crops such as corn and soybeans.
Hello, my name is Landon Marks, and I'm a regional extension agent for animal science and forages here in Northeast Alabama. But I'm going to talk to you today about the Black Belt region. So for my project that I did there, I looked at alternative forage systems for developing heifers in the Southeast. So the predominant forage in this area is endophyte-infected tall fescue. So forage-based cattle production is an integral part of the southeastern U.S. agriculture economy. Heifer development is certainly an important aspect of beef production. So heifer development on forages is critical considering feed is one of the most expensive components of the development phase. This study was conducted in the Black Belt region of Alabama at the Black Belt Station. The objective of this study was to evaluate alternative forage systems for developing replacement heifers. Forages evaluated were Kentucky 31 tall fescue, Pensacola Bahia grass, and native warm season grass mix of big blue stem, little blue stem, and Indian grass, either having nitrogen applied or no nitrogen applied, for developing heifers over summer months of the summer slump that's associated with tall fescue. So over the 2-year study, we had 36 heifers. They were crossbred Sem-Angus heifers, and they were randomly assigned to one of 4 grazing treatments. So they were assigned to the native warm season grass with nitrogen or without, Bahia grass, or the Kentucky 31 tall fescue. So they grazed from the end of May, maybe 1st of June, until September. So our response variables were forage mass, nutritive value of the forages, animal performance, and then conception rate. So for forage mass, there were no differences between the tall fescue, Bahia grass, or the native warm season grass with no nitrogen. The native warm season grass without nitrogen applied exhibited less production than the tall fescue, but did not differ from the native warm season grass with nitrogen application. For the nutritive value, we're going to look at a chart here that kind of shows the effect of forage treatment and harvest date on the concentration of crude protein as a percent of dry matter basis. So in this chart, you'll see the progressive dates along the left-hand side, showing the seven different collection dates, which were done every other week across the summer. So as you look at the crude protein percent as the season progresses, it does like what you think it would do as that forage matures throughout the season. So we have a higher concentration of crude protein in the earlier part of the season than the later part of the season, pretty well across the forages. As you look at the differences between each of the forages, we do see some differences. If you look down at the means, so for our native warm season grass with no nitrogen, the average crude protein percent was 6.1. With nitrogen, 7.2. For our tall fescue, our average was 11. And then for our Pensacola Bahia grass, it was 7.9. These particular forages were similar across, with the IVTD for native warm season grass with no nitrogen at 69%, native warm season grass with nitrogen at 67%, the Pensacola Bahia grass at 74%, and the endophyte infected tall fescue at 73%. So when you look at the animal performance associated with this project, there were no differences for the initial birth weight, final birth weight, reproductive tract score, which gives us an indication of the development of the reproductive tract, or days pregnant across those grazing treatments. Average daily gain did differ between grazing treatments, where heifers grazing the native warm season grass with nitrogen applied, they had an increased average daily gain than those heifers grazing the tall fescue or Pensacola Bahia. The length of grazing season differed, where heifers grazing the Pensacola Bahia and the endophyte infected tall fescue grazed longer at 85 days than the native warm season grass with nitrogen at 76 days and the native warm season grass with no nitrogen at 72 days. Developing heifers on forages is certainly an option that demonstrates steady growth and performance at a reduced cost compared to other options for developing heifers. This study provides information on alternatives to endophyte infected tall fescue and perennial forage system options that would perform well in the Black Belt soil region of Alabama and possibly across the southeast U.S. without losing growth and reproductive performance. We certainly understand the importance of heifer development and replacing some of those cows as they age in the system. So being able to alleviate some of the costs and also develop those heifers in the way that they're going to be productive throughout their life becomes an important aspect of our beef systems. So I thank you guys for the little bit of time talking about this particular study as well as the Black Belt region of Alabama. And if you have any questions, I will have a poster talking about the forage production of this particular project. So you're certainly welcome to come by and visit with us about this particular project. We certainly didn't have time to go into depth on everything, but thank you for attending this conference. And I hope you've enjoyed some of the virtual tours associated with Alabama. Thank you.
One of the goals here is to evaluate different types of forages for the winter months and also for summer. The overall goal is to do this year-round grazing, how we can minimize the supplementary feeding. I mean, we want to supplement goats with forages rather than with supplements from the stores. Right? That is the overall goal. And over the last 5 years, we have been trying different forages, mostly annuals. So this winter forage that this year we have oats, and we have annual ryegrass and annual ryegrass and crimson clover combined, and also annual ryegrass by itself. That's what we have.
So how many acres is the research farm?
38 acres altogether, but this grazing area is 12 acres. And this is for winter and summer forage grazing experiments. But we have some area, we have some wooded areas, woodland areas, and we can, I think that is ideal for goats. You know, if you have some browse and you have goats can go there. If you could open this fence and let them go there, that will be ideal, you know. They love to browse. They're very happy.
Okay.
And look at what they have done. See?
Yeah.
Did you see that? We pull them out of this place. Okay, we don't want to go too low. I think 2 to 3 inches or 3 to 4 inches is the lowest you want to go. Otherwise they will start picking up worms, right? Okay, these are our, this is a little bit mixed, but these are yearling goats, okay? And mostly Kiko. Boars, in our management, boar goats didn't do very well here. They don't do very well. So most of our goats are Kiko. Almost full-blood Kikos, okay? And they are very good. Kikos are not as attractive as boars, sheep. So this is the problem with goats. You can easily see how easily they can escape. So fencing is very important.
Yeah.
This is ideal for goats. If you go 4x6, they get their head stuck there. And if you are going for the weekend, you'll find a dead animal on Monday. You know? So this is ideal. 6 feet is not enough for breeding males, okay? They'll jump over. Particularly Kiko bugs. And we have some boar animals here. What I have started to do here is to keep Kiko females and boar males. Boar males, Kiko females are better, they survive better in this environment. Also maintenance costs a little bit less for Kiko moms. So we breed with boar males, sometimes we put Kiko bugs. We are doing kind of cross breeding. That is one goal here, to see what crossbreds do under this environment. We're just keeping them. We have another study plan. In the near future, we will use these goats for that study.
Okay. So the focus of the unit here, the focus of the research unit
several things. First thing is for teaching, right? These are animals we use for hands-on labs, and we teach our students how to do hoof trimming, deworming, how to draw blood, how to do the tagging, and all those hands-on skills. That's one thing we teach our students. Like I told you, we have a lot of animal science students, right? Next thing is we want to do a lot of experiments that to address all the problems faced by producers. Like parasite is number one, right? We want to see what are the alternative ways of controlling parasites. That's why we are trying to do with Sericella stridida. We did with pine bark. We did with peanut skin. Because this particular worm, Among us, Condensed tannin seems to work against this worm. Pine bark is very high in condensed tannin, almost 11%. And we also tried with peanut skin. Peanut skin has condensed tannins about 4%. And we are doing serical aspidism. We tried to grow several times. This year I told our manager that we need to prepare the seed bed. We'll put 2 acres. So that's it, number one. Number 2 is this year-round forage. Because Alabama, in this area, you can grow forages year-round if you can do it right time, if weather is helpful, favorable. That's what we want to do. We want to identify forages. In the winter time, I told you oats do very well, crimson clover and ryegrass, those are ideal in this area. During the summertime, we have found one forage really doing very well here, sun hemp. Sun hemp does really well, and it is a legume, so you don't need to any nitrogen fertilizer. You know more than I do, I guess. Sun hemp problem is it grows too fast. As far as future research is concerned, there are a couple of things lined up. One is we're trying to evaluate hemp seed cake, hemp seed meal, you know, the byproduct of industrial hemp oil production. That cake is very high in protein, almost 35, over 30% protein, okay? But a lot of fiber, you know. The ADF and NDF levels are very high. So we did the initial test and it looks pretty good. Goats love that, it can pellet very well. We had 50% forage and 50% concentrate, including hemp. We went as high as 30% hemp cake meal, hemp seed meal, and goats did pretty good. But they were not as comparable to the control diets because there is so much fiber there. I think the energy levels are low. So this year we have gotten another grant to study further, and we'll do a little bit of fortification of diets with higher amount of energy and see how they will do.
Hi, I'm Paul Vinning, Animal Science and Forages Regional Extension Agent here in Northwest Alabama. Today I'm here with Mr. Roland Coan in Mount Hope, Alabama. Mr. Coan is a Bermuda grass hay grower. Mr. Coan's always on the cutting edge, does a great job with Bermuda grass production, and today he's graciously given us the opportunity to briefly interview him and talk a little bit about his operation and some of his goals and some of his successes. So, Mr. Coan, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started growing Bermuda grass hay.
Well, Paul, I grew up here in this community on a farm that consisted of row crops, cotton, corn, soybeans, a little bit of wheat. We had beef cattle, dairy cattle, hogs, a little bit of everything. And of course, that farming operation fell victim to the farm crisis of the 1980s, or 1980. And when I finished high school during that time period, there was no way really for me to be viable as a farming operation. So I had a friend that told me or persuaded me to go to Auburn and pursue a degree in agriculture. So in 1986, I graduated with a degree in ag economics from Auburn and went to work for First South Farm Credit, or the company that is First South Farm Credit today. Worked for them for 32 years, making farm loans and doing farm appraisals. Over that time period, I started a small cattle operation that evolved into what is now a Bermuda grass hay operation. Over the years, we planted the field that's in the background here in Russell Bermuda grass in 1997, and it is still in production today. But that's sort of the history of this operation.
So could you tell us a few main goals of your farming operation, kind of what you want to do each year, what you want to accomplish?
Well, our first goal is to produce high quality Bermuda grass hay for the horse market in North Alabama. Our goal is to produce upwards of 10,000 square bales per year, small square bales. And then we also produce some 4x5 round bales of high quality horse hay. And we will have some hay that we can't sell to the horse market due to weather or whatever, that we sell as cow hay.
Could you tell us one or two of your major accomplishments, some major milestones that really stand out in your mind as far as Bermuda grass hay production throughout your career here?
Starting with 17 acres here on this farm in 1997, we have grown to approximately 85 acres of Russell Bermuda grass in production today, with approximately 40 acres of mixed grass hay at various places. You know, that's probably a milestone. One of the other accomplishments that that stands out to me is I had a hay sample that placed third in the Southeastern Hay Contest a few years ago, and I've had several samples of Bermuda grass hay that have placed just outside of the top 5.
Could you describe one of your favorite parts of hay production and just something that you really enjoy as part of this process?
Obviously, seeing customers showing up to pick up hay out of the field or out of the barn, and knowing that you've produced a product that they are desirous of is one of those satisfying feelings. Just looking at a field of Bermuda grass just ready to cut is, that's always enjoyable as well.
One final question. Mr. Coan always participates in many of our extension programs. What's something that Alabama Cooperative Extension has helped you with, or that you find valuable? Often you end up helping us as far as your knowledge, but what's something that really stands out in your mind that's useful?
Paul, I'll have to give a lot of credit to the Extension Service as a whole, to Gerry Thompson, Paul, yourself, Dr. David Russell, Dr. Leanne Dillard, and many others, back to Dr. Don Ball. We could probably talk for hours about the things that I've benefited from Extension. But one of the most beneficial things that I've seen over the last several years is the Bermuda Grass Hay Growers Summit that was started several years ago, which is a fairly intensive meeting, and it started out of a couple of producers approaching Gerry in particular with a question of could we have some graduate level extension programs rather than, the 100, 200 level meetings that we have are good, but we felt there was a need for something with a little more substance to it. And that has been a very good meeting.
Well, Mr. Coan, thank you for meeting with us today and allowing us to do this interview. You've been a big, help to me, particularly just with the knowledge that you have from years of doing this, growing Bermuda grass hay, and really being an expert in the field. So thank you, and look forward to continuing to work with you in the future.
Same here, Paul.
Hello, this is Gerry Thompson, Regional Extension Agent for Animal Sciences and Forages in the beautiful Tennessee Valley region. Coming to you today from the Tennessee Valley Research and Extension Center in historic Belmina, Alabama. This Extension Center is one of the original research stations that was formed in 1929, and it consists of about 750 acres. That's about equally divided between row crop land and pasture land that we use for cattle production. This farm is always been known for tremendous cotton research. It was the history of this area of Alabama, but you can't see it, but just a little ways away from here is the Redstone Arsenal and the Marshall Space Flight Center and Cummins Research Park, one of the most technologically advanced places in America. So we also deal with not only the challenges of dealing in agriculture, but also the challenges associated with encroaching urban development in our area too. So on this farm, which is basically like most North Alabama farms, very heavily based on fescue, we do a fair bit of research and demonstration work involving fescue toxicosis issues. We do some stockpiling fescue, and we also do a fair bit of work with post-weaning gain in our cattle and trying to enhance the value of cattle during the weaning phase. This area of the state is one of the primary cattle producing areas. We have the great ability to grow a wide range of forages, and as such, the part of the land that's not taken up with row crop production is frequently involved in beef cattle production. If you're ever in this area, I'd sure be glad to have you stop by and let me show you around the farm. Thanks.
Hello, my name is David Russell, Assistant Research and Extension Professor in Weed Science at Auburn University. I'm located in North Alabama at the Tennessee Valley Research and Extension Center, and I have statewide weed management responsibilities in corn, soybean, small grains, forage pasture, and non-crop and rights-of-ways. Alabama is a very diverse state in both geography and acres of crop production. Over 4 million acres are devoted to forage production in Alabama. In land use acreage, this is second only to forest lands. Hay by itself is currently produced on over 800,000 acres across the state. And with this diversity comes the diversity in weed issues on nearly all these acres. So from my perspective, we're never lacking in forage weed management research projects. In nearly every forage weed management scenario, our program is able to practice an integrated pest management program to combat issues with troublesome species. Beginning with preventative measures, we always encourage producers to do things like plant certified weed-free seed, clean equipment, and stop weed seed hitchhikers. Additionally, with the help of both our extension beef and forage specialists and our extension animal science and forages team, we're able to be a collective voice that encourages producers to conduct cultural practices like rotational grazing and fertility management to combat these weeds. A healthy forage stand is nearly always our first line of defense against troublesome species. As part of this integrated management approach, for example, We help growers to understand weed plant life cycles to make better judgment calls about when and how mechanical methods would be most effective for controlling these weeds. Chemical control is widely used as part of this integrated strategy as well. So many of our statewide programs focus on issues like proper sprayer calibration, herbicide stewardship, and proper application timing for forage weed management. And speaking of timely weed control, this buttercup covered field in the spring is a perfect example of why we should be timely. When it comes to forage weed control, we found that many of these decisions are largely based on visual thresholds and farmers' intuition. Through field demonstrations, we've also been able to show how many of these weeds can be controlled with timely applications using specific herbicide products and even at lower use rates, which is ultimately more economical and beneficial for forage and livestock production. Our program also addresses the many woody brush species we see in and around forage production, such as fence line vegetation management, these same scenarios in unproductive hayfields, and several programs that address toxic weeds to grazing livestock. But in our statewide research and extension programs, this issue of weedy grass control almost always seems to be the most difficult and probably the one issue that keeps us most busy. So how do you selectively remove perennial grasses like broom sedge, for example, from fields, or foxtail from productive pastures and hayfields? These are just a few of the many issues we have the opportunity to work on year round. Our research and extension program is somewhat cyclical in that we get feedback, we get concerns, and all the many questions from producers statewide that help us inform our research programs. The findings we determine from these studies then turn into information that we can give back to the producers of Alabama to be more profitable and hopefully to control these weeds a little easier. So it's always satisfying when we can provide weed management solutions for Alabama forage and livestock producers across our state. So if you have any questions about forage weed management, please visit our website at aces.edu, where you can find our forage IPM guides for all the forage labeled products and their use. Otherwise, please feel free to contact me if you have any forage related weed questions. Again, thanks for your time.
Hey, I'm Andy Sumners, Sumners Farm, in cattle business with my dad, Stanley Sumners. We're in North Alabama, about an hour and a half north of Birmingham, an hour south of Huntsville, just kind of in between there. Place called Sand Mountain, a little bit of sandy soil and all here. We raise South Pole, registered South Pole cattle, have been since 2006, started with 20 head and now up to a little over 100 mama cows, all registered females here. Running about 6 herd bulls here, and we DNA test for sire. We do some rotational grazing here, plant winter annuals and summer annuals also, and have a little system that works for us here. The cows get about an hour a day of grazing on what you see here. So, on this mix here we have black oats, kale, radish, vetch, and Mehigh clover and crimson clover. We get this in the ground hopefully by September 15th. That's kind of our magic date here. We've played around with some different dates on that, and that seems to be the number that works the best for us here. And very minimal fertilizer now. We've been doing annuals for 7-8 years here. I tell everybody this ground wouldn't have grown a rock when we started this, and now it's the best soil on our farm. Like I said, very minimal fertilizer, probably a ton to ton and a half of chicken litter is about all this gets. And then of course with our clovers and everything we plant in the summer, that just helps with all the fertilizer needs. Our summer is our millet, buckwheat, cowpeas, and sun hemp. Kind of the same deal there with as we do in winter. We get in the ground hopefully April the 15th. Usually 45 to 50 days we're grazing. So by June 1 we anticipate grazing, And with any kind of moisture at all, we'll get usually 3 rounds of grazing per strip on all these fields that we plant. And we'll be grazing that all the way through until we get ready to plant our winter mix September the 15th. How we manage our grazing here is once we start the grazing after planting, we'll give them strips that's usually around 30 to 40 foot wide, 200 foot long, so not much more than 1/4 of an acre, about 1/3 of an acre actually. 40 to 50 head of cattle on that for about 45 minutes to an hour. When we let them in here, they're waiting at the gate ready to go, and when we come back and they hear us coming, usually they're picking up their heads and they're walking off, and we don't really even have to push them very hard to get them off of here. Do that with both our winter and our summer annuals. You know, and then they go back up to what we call them in our sacrifice pasture, where it's perennials, fescue, Bermuda pasture. In the winter we do feed hay. We feed Bermuda hay, and we also have done some baleage out of our winter grazing that we've had real good luck with, and fed that along with our dry hay and supplemented with that. They've been some tests ran here on summer and our winter, and on the summer grazing, what has come out of that has the cattle was getting what they needed in nutrients in that hour for their daily requirements, and then going back and grazing for the rest of the day in the perennial pasture. Winter, not so much, but the protein and all was so great in numbers that they're getting just about what they need here in that hour also, and then going back to their hay and their haylage. You know, if you're thinking about starting to do strip grazing, rotational grazing on winter or summer annuals, you know, I suggest just go visit some farms, see what everybody's doing, and kind of get some different ideas from different farms. I tell everybody that's here, you know, what we do here not necessarily going to be what works for you at your place, but you can take some ideas off of each place and put together something that works at your farm. You know, there's people that will let their cattle graze for 2 or 3 days or even a week. They're still rotational grazing and move, but they're moving them, and that's fine. But you just got to find out what works for you and what you have time for. Just here, you know, I'm a full-time farmer, have poultry houses and the cattle, so we're here and able to move these cows more intensively than some folks are able to do. But whatever you do, do what you enjoy doing and do what you can do. Don't make it where it's just like a job every day to move your cattle. So you know, just go visit some farms. That's what I encourage you to do.
Well, I'm Alex Tigg. I'm one of the regional extension agents here in Alabama. I cover the east central part of our state in an 11-county region in central Alabama. But today we're up here at my father's farm in extreme northeast Alabama, the little community of Dutton. So well, this farm, we've owned the farm since about 1991 and have had cattle here since about 96 when my dad and I first started getting some cows. And really over the last several years have made some pretty drastic improvements to what we're doing. And most of our improvements have been centered around our forage program. And so what you can kind of see behind me are what I would consider 2 of our biggest forage management changes we've made over the last several years that we think have been pretty successful. First is using a lot of this temporary electric fence. We've gone from a pretty slow rotation, 3-4 pastures, pretty typical what guys would do, just moving cattle every few weeks, to over the last 5 years incorporating temporary electric fence into our program. We're moving cattle throughout the year, twice a week, once or twice a week, depending on time of year, weather, and the growth of the grass. And the other one being stockpiled fescue. So we're pretty squarely in one of the fescue hubs of the state of Alabama, I guess, up in the northern part of the state. And then as we get really late in the year, like now, late January into February, if we have any grass left, you know, we're probably down to as little as 25% of their daily intake as grazing, and 75% as stored forage, as dry hay. And then we'll start doing a little supplemental feeding in December. We're fall calving here on our farm, and we'll use AI pretty extensively in December. So we'll start doing a little supplementation in December, start getting the cows to come up for our fixed timed AI program. We also use cool season annuals. 75–80% of our farm is in Kentucky 31 fescue, but we do have one 10-acre field that we've devoted to a cool season, warm season, annual rotation. And so we'll graze out those warm season annuals while we're stockpiling in September, and then plant our cool season grasses in October. But hopefully by March 15th, in a good year, if everything goes right, we're able to kind of come off of feeding hay and start grazing, get back to grazing 50% of dry matter intake every day, working towards completely coming off hay by April 1 most years. Well, I mean, one of the fun things about being an extension agent and growing up on a farm like this and still having a farm at home to kind of play with some is getting to kind of experience some of this. And one of the things from our experiences and what we've seen in research in other places that I've really encouraged a lot of producers to do is stockpiled fescue. I think if you live in North Alabama and you have access to fescue, if you're not crazy overstocked, you should be able to utilize stockpiled fescue in some way. But all that depends on good grazing management. And my advice to producers is always just to start. Really doesn't matter what day of the year it is or kind of where you're at right now. Just get started. That always seems to be the real stopping point for a lot of guys is, I've never done that. I've got a big farm. We're grazed down to nothing right now. How do I get started? And I always just kind of work with them on, let's just start somewhere and learn as you go. It doesn't have to be perfect on day one. I mean, we've been having cows on Sand Mountain for 25 years now, and I would argue that we make improvements every day. So, it's not going to be perfect day one, but you learn as you go and can make some kind of improvements that way. So, as far as, maybe some knowledge gaps that we could kind of think about from a research perspective, I think a lot of the work that's being done trying to come up with more strategies to mitigate the negative effects of toxic endophyte fescue are always going to be good. I mean, we would love to get producers to completely change and eradicate Kentucky 31 and change everything to the novel endophytes, but I think that's pretty unrealistic. And so anything we can do to help offset some of those problems, finding more novel varieties that have the same persistence as Kentucky 31. We think we've seen some of our research stations and on farms here in northern part of Alabama that the novel endophyte fescues are really, really good, but they're still not quite as persistent as Kentucky 31 is. And then, more demonstration and research kind of surrounding stockpiled fescue. I know there's a lot out there. Probably some of it has some age on it, but maybe some work around precision fertility management on stockpiling, timing, split applications of fertilizer versus single application. The use of poultry litter for here on Sand Mountain is incredibly important. This is the big poultry belt in our state, and we have access to lots and lots and lots of litter. And then different ways to utilize some of this forage as well, I guess, would be some of the thoughts I've had.
Hello folks, I'm Kent Stanford with Alabama Extension. I'm coming to you today from the Sand Mountain Research and Extension Center in Crossville, Alabama, located about halfway between Birmingham and Chattanooga. I wanted to give you a brief overview of this station and the type of work that has been conducted here over the years. This station was one of the original 5 that were established by the legislature, and they began work here in 1929. Obviously, since 1929, they've moved on from the days of mules doing most of the work, but the old mule barn is still standing, and they've actually got the nameplates for some of those animals that were stalled there so many years ago. Livestock have always been an important part of this station, with beef cattle being a mainstay over the years. There was also a dairy herd here for a long time. They had a hog unit that was supported for many, many years, and then sheep and goats later joined the mix here. At one point, there were over a dozen houses on this station for the farm workers, and it's always interesting to me to hear the stories about what those workers were provided. They got a half a beef a year, a top hog to put in the freezer, all the fruits and vegetables that they wanted from the garden, and they were able to fish then in some of the ponds here on the station. I still refer to it as a station, as a lot of people do, but it is currently called a Research and Extension Center and was formalized in that name change in 2000. As part of this unit over the years, they've been as probably diversified as anyone in the state, with much livestock production, a lot of forage crop work, a lot of row crop production. Much work was done for several years on fruit and vegetables, and that continues even with the great projects that are going on now. I guess there's a couple of interesting notes about this station that encompasses over 560 acres. It got some positive attention in the late 80s and early 90s with a constructed wetland that was put in to treat swine effluent. People came from all over the world to see how the design of the system was put into place and how it operated, and it was a very effective measure that got lots of attention at that time. Also in the 80s and 90s, a lot of work was done on nutrient management with the use of poultry litter and other animal manure such as the hog effluent, but primarily with poultry litter since we are in the poultry belt of Alabama. Much of that work involved runoff and the potential for runoff, an issue that we continue to focus on today. Finally, the forage side of things is awful important here. You can see that I'm standing in some plots here that are part of a ryegrass variety trial that goes on annually. There are long-term forage fertility trials here, and there's also a long-term fertility trial that began in 1929. The data from that particular project is turned in to our soil testing lab, and that's used in the recommendations that we provide annually. Also on a forage side of things, one interesting note is that there is a named Bahia grass variety that was named Sand Mountain Bahia. It was found in some plots here at this station. It is commercially available and is fairly widely used as we see more Bahia grass coming into our area. So I hope you've learned a bit here about the Sand Mountain Research and Extension Center in Crossville, Alabama. Hey folks, Kent Stanford here with Alabama Extension. I'm coming to you today from the Sand Mountain Research and Extension Center up in the northeast part of Alabama. My co-worker Landon Marks is here with me today, and we're going to tell you a little bit about our Sand Mountain Heifer Development Project. We're going into year 6 of our project. We started this several years ago in an effort to showcase proper heifer development and to hopefully be able to do that using winter annuals without any supplemental feed. In most years we're able to do that. Drought hit us a couple of years and we did have to do some supplemental feeding, but for the last 2 years we've been able to get the kind of gains we're looking for without the use of any supplemental feeds. What we do is we come in the fall of the year on these paddocks. There's not much grazing pressure on them during the summer, so we have to cut whatever accumulated forage is here, clean these off, and then drill our annuals in a no-till situation each fall. We've tried a variety of species as well as varieties over the years, so we've kind of locked in on the use of some small grains. We've got rye. We also got a couple of different varieties of oats in this year, and then quite a bit of ryegrass. So we've got 2-acre paddocks here. We keep these heifers in smaller groups, typically 12 to 16 head, and rotate them with a simple concept. We do the take half, leave half approach, never grazing below 4 inches if possible. Now we're not immune to what folks have to deal with in the real world, so we're in need of some nitrogen right now on these paddocks. We put down 50 units of nitrogen in the fall, and we come back with an additional 50 units in the spring, and we've just been in a situation where weather and other considerations have kept us from being able to get our nitrogen application done. While I'm finishing up this part of the talk, I'm going to ask Landon Marks to come in and share with you just a little bit about the repro side of things as well.
Hey, Landon Marks here with the Sand Mountain Elite Heifer Development Program. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the repro side of what we do. So with these heifers, we're coming up on the 1st of April. So what we'll do, we use estrus synchronization to sync these heifers up. We'll use the Select Sync plus Cedar protocol. So we'll get these girls up the first week of April. They'll go through the estrus synchronization program. We will do pre-breeding exams on these heifers prior to that, where we'll have Dr. Soren Rodning, our extension veterinarian. He'll come up and do repro tract scores as well as pelvic measurements. So at that time we make any decisions on some heifers that maybe aren't quite ready to breed, and then we'll go ahead with our estrus program. So after we get them synced up, we do artificially inseminate these heifers. We use a high accuracy calving ease bull in order to breed these, and then after one opportunity at AI, we'll turn in a registered Angus bull that we borrow from the beef teaching unit from Auburn's campus. They'll run with that bull till the end of June, and at that time we really don't mess with the heifers very much after breeding to make sure that any type of fetal development that's taking place, we're not hindering that progress. We will have the vet school come up and help us do some pregnancy detection, so they'll use ultrasound to give us an idea of where these heifers are in their pregnancy status.
Many folks want to know about the kind of performance that we get out of these heifers, and so we're really trying to showcase what it means to properly develop. For our goals here, we try to set that goal at anywhere from 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of gain. What we're seeing over the last 5 years of our project is we're clocking in there about 1.75 pounds, which is right where we need to be. Now, this program is designed for consigners to bring heifers in, so they do consign these heifers. We don't have any control over the genetics that come in, so we've had a variety of genetics over the years that have been represented in the project, and certainly as you look here in the background, you can see that we've got some different breeds represented in the project this year. But year in and year out, we've been able to get the kind of performance that we need through basically about 5.5 to 6 months of development. Our timeline is we bring these heifers in the first week of January. They stay with us into the month of June, and then as Landon mentioned, after we preg check and determine what we've got safe in calf, we'll send them home in June. So folks, that's just a synopsis of our heifer development project here. We don't do anything on this station that folks couldn't do at home on their own place, and we're proud of some of the successes that we've seen, some of the people that have chosen to do some very novel things on their places, as well as folks that have learned a little more about their calf crop. One important aspect of this program is that we do carcass ultrasound, and so we've had some guys that started actually feeding out some cattle and retaining ownership on their calves after they saw the performance that they were getting on the heifers and with that carcass ultrasound data. So we hope that you've learned a little bit about our project. It's a statewide project open to anybody in Alabama. We've got a capacity of about 60 head here, and we don't always hit that capacity, but we've got a really good quality set of cattle here. If you're in the area sometime, give us a call. We'd be happy to show you around. Thanks for joining us today.
We hope you learned something, and we're excited about some of the things that we're doing here in Alabama. We welcome you to come to Sweet Home Alabama anytime you want to see all this stuff in person, and we look forward to seeing you next year.